Pemirsa, terima kasih Anda masih bersama kami. Pencarian dana segar di pasar modal terus berlanjut hingga di tahun 2023 ini. Dalam laporan Bursa Efek Indonesia, terdapat 43 perusahaan dalam pipeline yang pencatatan saham yang akan melakukan penawaran umum saham perdana atau IPO.
Bursa Efek Indonesia dalam laporan informasi, sebanyak 43 perusahaan dalam pipeline pencatatan saham yang akan melakukan penawaran umum saham perdana atau Initial Public Offering atau IPO. Pencarian dana segar di pasar modal ini terus berlanjut hingga 2023 ini. Direktur Penilaian Perusahaan Bursa Efek Indonesia Gedung menjelaskan berdasarkan klasifikasi aset perusahaan merujuk pada Peraturan OJK Nomor 53 Tahun 2017. Sebanyak 4 perusahaan memiliki aset skala kecil, yakni dengan nilai aset di bawah 50 miliar rupiah. Sebanyak 26 perusahaan memiliki aset skala menengah dengan nilai aset antara 50 hingga 250 miliar rupiah. Dan sebanyak 13 perusahaan memiliki aset skala besar dengan nilai aset di atas 250 miliar rupiah. Sementara berdasarkan sektoral, rincian ke-43 perusahaan tersebut adalah 5 perusahaan dari sektor basic materials, sebanyak 8 perusahaan dari sektor consumer cyclicals, 5 perusahaan dari sektor consumer non-cyclicals, 3 perusahaan dari sektor energi, 2 perusahaan dari sektor finansial, sebanyak 1 perusahaan dari sektor healthcare. Selebihnya perusahaan calon penghuni bursa efek dari sektor industrials, infrastructures, properties, dan real estate, hingga perusahaan dari sektor teknologi dan transportation logistik. Hingga 26 Mei 2023, telah tercatat 40 perusahaan yang mencatatkan saham di Bursa Efek Indonesia dengan dana dihimpun sebesar 32,7 triliun rupiah. Jakarta, Tim Liputan IDX Channel.
Ya, pemirsa, membahas terkait dengan topik tadi di mana 43 perusahaan ini sudah ngantri buat IPO di Indonesia. Apakah ini sebuah good sign? Kita akan berbincang terkait dengan topik ini bersama dengan Jasmine Maranan, PwC Indonesia Capital Market Advisor. Bu Jasmine, how are you? Thank you for your time.
I'm good. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me here, Kezia.
Really excited. Okay, speaking about this topic, saying that it was stated that Indonesia Stock Exchange have announced that there are 43 companies that have is in line with for the pipeline for the IPO. How do you see this? How do you see this? What's the behind the 43? Is it a good stimulus? Is it a good enthusiasm? Is it a good trend for Indonesia?
Well, absolutely. That's really a lot of enthusiasm from investors. That number, which is really demonstrating a very strong pipeline for the Indonesian Stock Exchange, demonstrates the investors' positive sentiment towards the company, towards the country, given the strong economic fundamentals. In fact, 2021 and 2022 have been phenomenal years for the Indonesian Stock Exchange, and that continues until the first quarter of 2023. We have large IPOs,
Yes, exactly.
Pertamina Geothermal Energy. We also have Harita Nickel and Merdeka Battery Materials. And so these companies that are kind of like the new promising sector compared to what we had before in the technology sector. So I think, Kezia, what will happen is that the number of IPOs for the entire year of 2023 may well exceed what IDX is aspiring for, and I think that's about 58. So that will definitely be higher than 58.
All right. Speaking of good stimulus, Indonesia Stock Exchange last year in 2022 released a new economy board, which is they stated that it provides awareness for investors in making investment decisions in the listed companies. But seeing from companies' perspective, to what extent is this a good stimulus for the technology sector companies?
Well, thanks for asking that. I think the new economy board, and that's a new segmentation. I think we have 3 companies in the new economy board, and that's Goto, Blibli, and also Bukalapak. Yes, that's right. Now, the new economy board actually paves the way for high innovative companies to actually access the capital, public capital, right? The public float. And so that really is good. Indonesia is a hotbed for a lot of startups, and I think there are about 2,300 startups which are in varying stages of growth. And once you reach the growth stage as well as the late stage, then there is a good number of companies who will really go out for IPO.
Speaking of, there's a growth stage. So what is the certain circumstances that a company need to look to prepare for IPOs? That what is the best time, or what is the best performance from the company? Oh, right now we will decide we go for IPO this year. Well, what are the factors to determine we are ready going for IPO?
Okay, well, one, you talked about the timing. What is the best time to go for an IPO? Effectively, the best time to launch an IPO is actually when there is little volatility in the market. So in the equity market space, we have a barometer, if you like. It's called volatility index. So if the volatility index is below 20, then the market is really conducive for launching IPOs. Now, as to your question, what are the kind of like the success factors in an IPO? I always want to think that early preparation is very critical. You know, to be prepared for it, you have to look at various areas and functions within an organization. You also have to think of tax, legal consequences. You also have to think of the accounting and financial reporting considerations, and also the new term, ESG. So you've got to think about the ESG and sustainability practices factored in. So I think there are a lot of areas to be looked at, and the company must really be prepared for it. I always want to think, and this is really my personal analogy, when you go for IPO, it's like getting married.
Okay.
Okay, the moment you ring the bell on the Indonesian Stock Exchange, that's the moment you say, I do.
So it's a commitment.
Yes, and what that means is basically you must be in for the long haul.
Exactly.
And it is a commitment.
So it's like a commitment and responsibility coming after the IPO, after being listed in Indonesia Stock Exchange. It's really interesting, speaking that maybe requiring a more additional capital might be not the only factor or reason to go for IPO. What is actually the exact reason or the valid reason for a company to go for IPO rather than just fundraising?
Thanks for asking. There's a lot of reasons, and one is really for capital growth, right? They will access capital. And other reasons, based on our experience, there are second generation individuals who are actually thinking to actually get into the business, right? So if you are a founder and you're getting old, IPO is one of the potential possibility for succession planning. Also, I can think of, having prestige. If you are a listed company, you have public information that can be accessed by a lot of stakeholders, and therefore, you've got your name. And if you have your name out there, you're able to actually access capital more easily than if you are a private company.
So it provides options to, can we say that, give a company for more sustainable future?
Indeed, it's really for the long term. Just like I mentioned, marriage.
Like a commitment in marriage.
Yes.
It's interesting. So how long does it take for a company to go for an IPO? How long is the process, the preparation, like you said, which is very important for going for IPO?
Great question, Kezia. Actually, the IPO listing or the IPO process is a relatively straightforward process. What I mean by that is by the time the company files its registration statement to the regulators, it usually takes about 4 to 5 months from that filing until the company obtains the effectivity letter. Right? Now, the thing is that the preparation time that leads to that event when you actually file your registration statement, that will vary from one company to another. So the preparation time depends on the maturity of the organization. Some companies we find are better prepared than others. And so we always advise companies to really start with an IPO readiness assessment, which gives a clear bird's eye view of where the company is and how long that would take for them.
Okay, so it might vary from one to another in preparing or the time preparation for IPO. Well, speaking of financial performance, So what needs to be prepared? Sometimes, like Bu Jasmine have stated that there's really need to be valid about tax, about obligations, the company that needs to be, because the life after the IPO might take a lot of responsibility. But we will discuss it after the break. So pemirsa tetaplah bersama kami karena Market Highlight akan segera kembali. Ya pemirsa, masih bersama kami di Market Highlight dan kami masih berbincang dengan Ibu Jasmine Maradan dari PwC. Tadi kita sempat berbicara mengenai bagaimana journey menuju IPO, sempat ditekankan bahwa memang ada satu responsibility dan tanggung jawab yang datang setelah perusahaan ini kemudian listed di Bursa Efek Indonesia. Well, Bu Jasmine, speaking about PwC itself, what is the role of PwC in Indonesia assisting companies that intend to conduct an IPO?
Great question, Kezia. Thank you for asking that. PwC Indonesia has a wide array of products and service offerings in order to assist companies prepare for the initial public offering. So we have our corporate strategy functions, as well as the accounting and reporting specialists. We also look at the tax and legal considerations, as well as information technology, the information systems, including the ESG and sustainability practices. So we have everything that a company who is preparing for an IPO needs. So that's really the key. Prepare. What
actually the common stumbling blocks that most usually the company find during the preparation?
Okay, in most of the experiences that we've got, we find that many companies set unrealistic timetable for the IPO. So what happens is that timeline gets pushed back, and the reason being is that some companies cannot even complete their financial statements, they cannot close their books, the auditors cannot finish the audits on a timely basis, and also some of the large companies need to have some kind of reorganization or restructuring in order to achieve optimal valuation from a tax perspective. And that usually takes time. There's one company that I've done, and they have to delay the IPO by 6 to 9 months because they need to restructure in order to achieve what they would want to achieve in terms of their IPO.
Speaking of experience, I can say that PwC have a long experience track records and assisting company for IPOs. What is the key success factor for the IPO?
Yes, well, that's the thing. The key success factor really is being prepared.
Again, being prepared.
Yes. So I would advise that an early IPO readiness assessment be done, right? So I will have to say that in the IPO business, you do not get a second chance to make a first impression. So it always has to be done first time and make it right.
All right. Can we talk about the life after the IPO? Speaking from the experience, are there any obligation that the company has to do as a public company?
Yes, absolutely. There are a number, and I will cite a few of them. So from a financial reporting perspective, the listed company must have to submit financial statements, their annual financial statements to the Indonesian Stock Exchange and to the OJK 3 months after their financial year ends. And then 4 months after the financial year end, the listed company must also have to submit its annual report as well as the sustainability report. And on a quarterly basis, quarterly financial statements need to be furnished to the Indonesian Stock Exchange. In addition to that, they also have to report material transactions within 2 days from the time the event occurred. So that's just some of the few regulations or requirements that a company listed has to comply with.
Right. So it's not probably. Exactly, PwC will assist from end to end.
Yes.
Okay.
So basically, PwC is the companion for the IPO journey.
Okay, to execute a successful IPO, right, Bu Jasmine?
Well, we always have to prepare, and you just cross your fingers that the market cooperates. But again, you always have to take on that journey someone who have done it for a long time.
Alright, very interesting. Pemirsa, menarik sekali. Tadi kita sudah berbincang dengan Bu Jasmine bagaimana perusahaan ini kemudian bisa mempersiapkan untuk IPO dan bagaimana kehidupan sebagai perusahaan publik. Menarik sekali, dan pemirsa, itu dia bincang-bincang kita hari ini. Dan terus tetap nonton IDX Channel, pemirsa, update terus informasi ekonomi bisnis Anda dengan menyaksikan IDX Channel, Your Trustworthy and Comprehensive Investment Reference. Saya Kezia 7 dan rekan-rekan yang bertugas pamit undur diri. Terima kasih dan sampai jumpa.